Hello, Quicksilver Slash here with something a little different today. After the replay that I put up a couple days ago featuring the Konigsberg and my 7-kill game in it, I had a lot of feedback and a number of people really, I don't think, fully appreciate how strong this ship is. On the surface, its stats don't look that good when compared to the other Tier 5 cruiser options. But once given a little of more chance and driving it and experiencing it, it really does come into its own as a cruiser and destroyer killer. So, first off, I'm just going to go through and point out what I use on my commander and as modules on the ship because I've had some questions about that, and then I'm going to go through some of its stats and how they compare to the American and Japanese counterparts. So for the commander, pretty easy choice for me. At lower tier, I'm not as interested in these 5 skills, 5-point skills, there we go. I like and find I get more effect out of more lower tier ones. So I have basics of survivability, I have experts marksman to increase that turret rotation speed, last stand because I find like a lot of the Japanese ships, the Germans are particularly prone to steering gear and engine damage, and you're gonna get wrecked if you're stuck sitting still. I then have High Alert to speed up my damage control party consumable, and finally Demolition Expert for that extra chance for fire. On the module front, pretty easy choices. Main armament modification 1, aiming system modification 1, and damage control 1. You don't have a lot of variety, and I find keeping your turrets in play and the bonuses to repair time on that very necessary. Anything you can do to improve the accuracy of these guns is just going to mean more citadels. And I find the ship, once again, a little prone to fire and flooding. So any chance of reducing the amount of time on fire or reducing the chance that I get lit on fire, like with the commander skill, I take them. So now getting more into the stats. Survivability, she's got 24,300 hit points, which is the lowest of any of the fully upgraded Tier 5 cruisers. The Omaha has 26,800 and the Furitaka has 30,700 with its Sea Hull. So that really, leaves the Koenigsberg behind as far as hit points and might lead you to believe that maybe it can't be as effective, particularly when you start looking at armor between 10 and 50 millimeters. The Omaha has between 10 and 76 and the Furitaka between 6 and 76. So as far as protection and hit points go, this isn't your ship, but you shouldn't be getting in the mix and really trying to do that. She doesn't play the same, I find, as some other cruisers, particularly because 2 of her turrets are on her stern. And let's get into that next because these guns are what make this ship. It has 3 times 3 150 mil turrets, 1 up front and 2 in the stern, which are actually offset, offering some interesting firing arcs. The further aft one actually has better arcs on the starboard side, with the further forward one having better arcs on the port side. But it almost guarantees that even at very extreme angles, you're going to have at least 2 turrets firing, which is a nice thing. The range is 16.5 kilometers, and that is massive advantage for this ship. By comparison, the Furitaka with its fully upgraded guns only gets 11.8. So you're able to outrange most ships and even, fight with some higher tier ones, as you'll see in the game I'm going to include after this. You may not be able to use the AP at that range, but you can just lay down HE, get the fires, get that tick damage going, and really hurt them. The other thing that makes these guns so strong and allowed me to one volley a pair of Murmansks in that other game where I just fired a volley, next reload, another volley at the other Murmansk, erasing both of them, is they've got 960 meter per second shell velocity out of the barrel. A very flat trajectory and very accurate. By comparison, the Omaha is 914 meters per second, and the Furitaka is only 870, which means you have to lead more. These these guns just go where you aim them, and particularly I find in anything sub 10 kilometers, if it's a cruiser, you're going to be punching through its side and getting those citadels reliably. And that's what makes her so effective at hunting down cruisers. And then the HE, just as reliable, and that high speed allows you to accurately hit destroyers. Moving into torpedoes, she has 4 triple-barreled torpedo tubes, 2 on each side, and they fire torps that are 6 kilometer range and 64 knots. Once again, a best in class and tier. The Omaha, they're 5.5 kilometers, only 56 knots, and the Firataka are also 6 kilometers, but they're 1 knot slower at 63. This means that the Konigsberg can be very flexible when you get in a situation you really shouldn't have put yourself in. So you've got a pair of battleships, because you can reliably put, 2 sets of tubes into one side, 2 off the other direction, driving right up the middle a set of battleships, and still lay massive damage onto them before you end up dying. Her AA is bottom of her class and tier, but tier 5 cruisers don't really have that good of AA anyways. I don't find it's till tier 6 that you start seeing some of the AA monsters like the Cleveland. By comparison, her AA rating is 22, the Omaha's is 27, and the Firataka's is 23, so not much difference between them. And when you get into maneuverability, all these ships are pretty even. The Koenigsberg's top speed 32.5, the Omaha does 34, and the Firataka does 34.5. And once again, the Koenigsberg kind of on the bottom. Her rudder shift is 6.9 seconds. By comparison, the Omaha's is 5.7. So, while she still is very maneuverable, and if I had the options as far as modules go for that second steering gear modification to speed up the rudder shift, I probably would, just to make her a little more reliable for dodging torpedoes and that in-close maneuver when you start to wiggle your butt. But where she does lead the class is in detectability. Her detectability by sea is 12 kilometers, 6.4 in the air. By comparison, the Omaha is 13.5 and the Firataka is 12.2. So when you start to mix in the gun range advantage she has over the other cruisers, and then that up close just brawling capability to just put massive damage in quickly, she starts to come into her own, and you really have to give her a little more respect than I think some people do. Against battleships, you can play a standoff game, keep the stern facing the battleship, and just wiggle back and forth, dodging their shells, keeping 2 turrets firing, harassing them, lighting them on fire, and just slowly building that damage up. And when you fire as quickly as she does, one volley every 7.5 seconds, it can really actually start to add up. And I hope you see that in this game, where I'm actually bottom tier. It's going to be a tier 7 game, me and a buddy playing in tier 5s, and I think we have a good one. So on to that. So here we are in the game, playing on Estuary Domination mode, and as you can see, it's a tier 7 game. Me and Envy Mountain Dew driving our tier 5s, and we're still going to try to have that big positive effect on this game despite being small tier. So here's one of the other things I love about the Koenigsberg. Let's see if I can get a look on it. I've mentioned it in the other video, but you notice the turrets can rotate 360 degrees. That was a couple patches back. They changed that any ship whose turrets should be able to do that can. And it's something that her turrets do. The front one obviously doesn't, but it makes her far more effective at that attack gunnery than she used to be. Because before, you could only fire from one side of your weave as you approached an enemy, but now the turrets just rotate and stay facing forward. Big advantage. And it looks like I may have a replay bug. So I'm just going to have to manually control the camera. You won't get to see what I'm aiming at. I'll try again later, but...
Enemy force sighted on the horizon.
good old Wargaming hasn't put full replay functionality in yet. So right off the bat, our plan is to rush A. I know there's probably going to be some destroyers here, and that's something I'm good at dealing with. I have hydroacoustic search equipped, and I've got HE at the ready. You can see the second I was detected there entering the circle, I did a weave because it could have been shells at me. They actually ended up at the friendly, but with hydroacoustic active, detect the torps well in advance and start putting fire onto that destroyer. Now unfortunately, I'm not quite close enough for that hydroacoustic to be acting. You have to, oh, it doesn't say here, I believe it's like 4.9 kilometers with the Konigsberg. So the second I get inside that, the Mitsuki's redetected. I think he had actually taken all his speed off, expecting to be able to sit in his smoke and throw torpedoes. Bit of a surprise to him. He's trying to get away. I do not have any plans on letting him do so. Get a fire. He's starting to tick down. He ran himself aground. I put the last couple shells in, and friendly ship finishes him off. Now hydroacoustic isn't just good for destroyers, it's actually very good for peering out of smoke screens, and with that enemy destroyer conveniently having laid a smoke screen for me, none of the enemy ships are spotting me, and I can possibly spot them. That Nuremberg right now is being spotted by a friendly destroyer, but I'm getting close to these islands just in case there's someone lurking right on the other side, hoping to get a torpedo run or something. It doesn't look like there is, so I continue to advance fire. I want to push these cruisers. It does not look like they have any support, so if we can be aggressive, we can take a tier 6 and 7 cruiser out of this game. And I fire one gun as it clears, the remaining 2 guns as they clear the land, and I get the kill.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
Next on the hit list is going to be this enemy Pensacola. And a big advantage you have when you're in a lower tier cruiser against a higher tier cruiser is your maneuverability and rate of fire. The Pensacola is a very maneuverable ship, but it's just a little bit bigger than these lower tier cruisers, and as a result can't wiggle quite as well. And you can see I'm not getting big damage in, about 1600 between those couple hits there. But that's going to add up. There's no way to recover it, and it just puts him closer and closer to one-hit kill range for friendly battleships.
The ship is on fire.
And you see I get lit on fire there. I take a quick look around to make sure there's not going to be too much fire in me, and I put it out. Unlike a battleship, you can't really afford to let fires continuously burn on a cruiser. And look, the shells are just missing me due to these relatively small maneuvers. Just wiggling back and forth, and it's messing their shots up. Meanwhile, I'm still just trying to lay fire down at that Pensacola. It's not the most accurate fire, but it's going to add up. But with this enemy Koenigsberg entering that 10-kilometer range, I switch to him, get the AP going, because really anything sub 10k, I feel, as I mentioned in the pregame, that you have that chance of getting citadels. And right here he's starting to turn on side. Shells just miss, but with the rate of fire I'm able to keep my guns going. I'm turning up, trying to get into that friendly destroyer's smoke screen. And there's a much bigger hit, finishing him off with a citadel. And I'm up to my second kill, 30,000 damage in. This may not be as spectacular as the other game, but I thought it was important to kind of show you how this ship fares in a higher tier game. Turning to dodge these torpedoes, but they end up running out before they got to me anyways. But I had no idea and did not want to eat a torpedo and waste a damage control. So the plan for now, just continue to harass this Pensacola. I can afford to with my rate of fire, and I have nothing else to shoot at. I'm going to start closing into B, hopefully to take another cap, and really start controlling this map. And I've got the Pensacola on the run. Because he's spotted, got a couple friendly cruisers behind me, and NV Mountain Dew and the Congo pushing into B. He's not in a position to try to push into me. And I can continue to just tick away at his health. And right there I'm just taking a look at that enemy Omaha. He's getting into that 10-kilometer range, so I'm starting to think about making him my primary target. Firing a couple more volleys at that Pensacola, and that's what I was hoping for, that fire. He had to put it out, but it means he's now vulnerable to any friendly HE fires, and that's kind of part of your role when you're small tier, I find, is by lighting fires on battleships, cruisers, you force them to make that decision as to whether or not they use damage control, and if they do, and then a friendly destroyer gets his shells in, you can do massive damage. So I finally decide at 7.5k, this Omaha's close enough. He's barely moving, and I am going to make quick work of him, just like that Paramermax. First volley, Paracitadels, 10,000 damage. Second volley is going to end his life.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
And that's the kind of damage you can do. This enemy Mahan comes around the corner. He's really focused on that Colorado. Secondaries are firing at him, but the guns on this ship are not particularly fast. One of the major upgrades the Nuremberg gets from the Konigsberg, despite having the same guns, is just faster turrets. Which I wish there was some way to get those at this tier, but it would make this ship overpowered. Because you can already see, once you get into that close range, despite having better stats, the Furitaka and Omaha really don't hold up against the withering fire of this ship and just the citadels you can lay into things. In reality here, I should probably be using AP against this Cleveland even. I don't know why I was choosing not to. It could have just been a brain fart. And now that he's nose on, doesn't make sense to continue using AP, but you can see the Mahan is. And the Mahan put some big damage in with some AP shells there. But I'm going to rely on fires to be what finish him off. And I get my 4th kill of the game. Just over 65,000 damage. And we're not done yet. So right now I'm trying to decide between that Pensacola and the Colorado. My first volley, I take it, I aim, it's at the Pensacola, but seeing where NV Mountain Dew is, I decide to switch to the Colorado. It's a tier 5 versus potentially tier 7 battleship. Any damage I can do to chip in and help is important. Colorado starts firing at me. I start weaving. First volley misses. Second volley looks to miss, but with that wreck of the Cleveland sinking in front of me, I have the choice of maneuvering over or running into it and getting stopped in my tracks. I turn, I eat a shell, but I get some more hits on him, lighting another fire on him. This one he puts out. And that's the game. And you can see just another really solid performance out of this ship. 356,000 credits, 4,000 experience. I did just shy of 70,000 damage with 139 shells, totaling up 4 kills, 10 fires, 4 sits. I captured some bases and I assisted in defending the one. Top of the team with 1,848 base experience. And, you know, just because you're the lowest tier doesn't mean you can't have a good game. And you can see this time, unlike some previous games where fires end up amounting to a lot of my damage, this was all pretty much the guns split fairly evenly between armor piercing and high explosive. And there's the breakdown of money. I ended up walking away with just over 300,000 after all my expenses, and a bunch more free XP and experience for the commander to put into other ships. I hope you enjoyed this replay, and as always, I'll have another one for you tomorrow.